The giant meeting hall on Nexus Prime buzzed with angry voices. Hundreds of alien creatures from across the galaxy sat in their floating chairs, all talking at once. Their translators worked overtime, turning clicks, hisses, and strange musical sounds into words everyone could understand. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the back corner where nobody paid attention to him. His dark blue uniform looked plain next to the bright colors and shiny metals the aliens wore. He was 45 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been coming to these meetings for 6 months, and still nobody cared what Earth had to say. The war was getting worse. The Hegemony Alliance and the Crimson Syndicate had been fighting for almost 2 years now. 12 star systems were burning. Millions of people were dead or homeless. The alien leaders kept making the same speeches about honor and duty, but nothing ever changed. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat next to Morrison. She was young, maybe 28, with short red hair and quick green eyes. She pressed her finger to the small device behind her ear and listened to messages from Earth. Her face stayed calm, but Morrison could see worry in her eyes. "Sir," she whispered, "Admiral Brooks wants to know if they said anything about our application." Morrison shook his head. Earth had asked to join the Hegemony Alliance 6 months ago. The papers were somewhere in a big pile on some alien's desk. The council treated humans like children who didn't understand grown-up problems. Ambassador Zithara from the Valonian Empire stood up to speak. She was tall and thin with purple skin and 4 arms. Her voice was high and musical, but her words were sharp. "The Syndicate has taken 3 more worlds this week. We need more ships, more soldiers, more weapons. We have given everything we can," replied Commander Kethros from the Mantis worlds. His bug-like head clicked as he talked. "Our fleets are already too small. Our people are tired of war." Morrison watched them argue. These aliens had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. They built cities on gas giants and mined asteroids the size of moons. They thought humans were babies who had just learned to walk. What they didn't know was that humans had been watching and learning for 30 years. Ever since the first human ship left Earth's solar system, they had been studying everything. How alien technology worked, how their governments made decisions, how they fought wars, how they made peace. Dr. Kevin Walsh worked in a secret lab under the mountains of Colorado. He was a thin man with thick glasses who rarely left his computers. For 3 years, he had been reading stolen messages between the Hegemony and the Syndicate. He knew their battle plans before their own soldiers did. He knew which worlds would be attacked next. He knew how many ships each side really had. The aliens thought they were being clever with their secret codes. They didn't know that human computers could break any code in minutes. They didn't know that human ships could hide in space so well that even the best sensors couldn't find them. Colonel Lisa Bennett sat 3 rows behind Morrison. She was Earth's military representative, a tough woman with short black hair and scars on her hands from old battles. She got a message on her wrist computer and read it carefully. Her face didn't change, but she looked at Morrison and nodded once. The president had made his decision. Earth would not wait any longer for permission to help. They were going to act. Morrison remembered the first time he had seen an alien ship. He was just a young pilot then, flying patrol missions around Mars. The alien vessel was beautiful and terrible, bigger than any human building. It moved through space like a dancing butterfly, so graceful it made him want to cry. The alien captain had been polite but cold. She spoke to humans the way a teacher might talk to a slow student. She explained that Earth was now part of the galaxy, but they would need to prove themselves worthy of respect. That was 30 years ago, and humans were still trying to prove themselves. The meeting dragged on for hours. The aliens made grand speeches about justice and freedom, but they never actually did anything. The Syndicate kept winning battles. The Alliance kept losing ships. And millions of innocent people kept dying while the politicians talked. Amy Carter listened to another message from Earth. She wrote something on a piece of paper and slid it to Morrison. He read it and almost smiled. Admiral Steve Parker was on his way with a small fleet. The Terra Nova and 12 other ships had just jumped into the system. They would arrive tomorrow. The aliens didn't know that those 12 ships were not alone. Hidden across the galaxy were hundreds of other human vessels. They looked like merchant ships or science vessels or colony transports, but each one carried enough weapons to destroy a small fleet. Each one was staffed by soldiers who had trained for years in secret. Major Chris Thompson was on a planet called Kepler 442b, right in the middle of the war zone. He was helping evacuate civilians while the two alien armies fought overhead. His team had saved over 50,000 people in the last month. Neither side had noticed because humans were very good at being invisible when they wanted to be. Morrison stood up as the meeting finally ended. The aliens filed out of the hall, still arguing about things they would never fix. He watched them go and felt sorry for them. They had forgotten how to solve problems. They only knew how to make them worse. "Ready to go home, sir?" Amy asked. Him. "Not yet," Morrison said. "Tomorrow we're going to show them what humans can really do." Amy smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the kind of smile a wolf might have when it saw a flock of sheep. The quiet time was over. Humanity was about to remind the galaxy why Earth's children were the most dangerous creatures that had ever lived among the stars. The Hegemony Alliance was dying. Supreme Commander Valethros stared at the holographic display in his command center and watched red dots disappear one by one. Each red dot was a ship with hundreds of crew members. Each one that vanished meant more friends were dead. The Crimson Syndicate had been winning for months. Their black ships moved through space like hungry sharks, destroying everything in their path. The Alliance fleet was down to 60% of its original strength. Whole worlds were under attack, and there weren't enough ships to protect them all. Valethros was a proud warrior from the Kralian Empire. His people had been fighting wars among the stars for over 2,000 years. His great-grandfather had commanded fleets when humans were still using wooden boats on their little blue planet. But now, for the first time in his life, he was scared. Message appeared on his screen. Captain Morrison from Earth wanted a meeting. Valethros almost deleted it. What could those primitive humans possibly offer? But then he looked at the battle reports again. Half his fleet was gone. His people were dying. Maybe it was time to listen to anyone who wanted to help. The meeting room on the Alliance flagship was cold and gray. Commander Zalathan from the Aquatic Worlds floated in a tank of blue liquid. General Morthek from the Stone People sat like a living mountain made of rocks. Admiral Yathara from the Bird Clans perched on a metal bar, her feathers bright red, with anger. Captain Morrison walked in with another human. This one was older, with white hair and calm blue eyes. He wore the same simple uniform, but something about him made the alien commanders sit up straighter. "I am Admiral Steve Parker," the new human said. "I speak for Earth's Defense Forces." Zalathan's tentacles wiggled with impatience. "What can your tiny fleet possibly do to help us? We've seen your ships, small, slow, and weak." Parker smiled. It was not a happy smile. "How many ships do you think Earth has?" "Our intelligence says maybe 50 vessels," General Morthak rumbled. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Barely enough to protect your home system." 1,200, Morrison said quietly. The room went silent. Then Admiral Yathara started laughing. Her high voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. 1,200? You cannot be serious. Your entire planet couldn't build 1,200 starships. Parker touched a control on his wrist. The lights dimmed and a huge holographic map appeared in the center of the room. It showed the entire galaxy with thousands of tiny dots scattered everywhere. Green dots were Alliance ships, red dots were Syndicate forces, and blue dots were human vessels. There were blue dots everywhere. The alien commanders stopped laughing. They stared at the display with growing horror. Human ships were hiding in asteroid fields, orbiting gas giants, drifting in empty space between star systems. Some were disguised as cargo haulers. Others looked like research stations or colony ships. But each blue dot represented a vessel packed with weapons and trained soldiers. "Impossible," whispered Commander Zalathan. "Our sensors would have detected them." "Your sensors see what we want them to see," Parker replied. "We've been watching you fight for 18 months. We know every battle plan, every troop movement, Every secret base. A new voice came from the communication system. Alliance Command. This is Captain Sarah Davis aboard the Hidden Blade. I'm currently 3,000 kilometers from the Syndicate flagship Crimson Death. They have no idea I'm here. Would you like me to prove it? The alien commanders looked at each other with wide eyes. The Crimson Death was the most heavily protected ship in the Syndicate fleet. It was surrounded by sensor arrays and guard ships. Nothing could get close to it without being detected. Transmit visual, Parker ordered. The holographic display changed to show the inside of a human ship. Captain Davis was a woman in her 30s with short brown hair and steady hands. Behind her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Through the main view screen, they could see the massive Syndicate flagship floating in space like a metal city. I have weapon locks on their engines, life support, and command center, Davis reported. I could disable their entire ship in 30 seconds, but my orders are to observe only. General Morthak's rocky face cracked with surprise. How did you get so close? We're very good at being invisible, Davis replied. Would you like me to knock on their hull to prove I'm really here? Before anyone could answer, another human voice came through the speakers. Alliance Command, this is Major Chris Thompson, on Kepler 442b. We've completed evacuation of the civilian populations from sectors 7 through 12. 2,300,000 people are now safe in our hidden facilities. Neither the Alliance nor the Syndicate noticed us moving them. Admiral Yathara's feathers turned pale with shock. 2 million people? That's impossible. Moving, that many civilians would require hundreds of transport ships. We used 843 vessels, Thompson replied calmly, all disguised as various types of civilian craft. The evacuation took 6 weeks. We also collected detailed intelligence on both armies during the operation. Parker touched his wrist control again. New images appeared on the holographic display. Human soldiers were helping wounded aliens in field hospitals. Human engineers were rebuilding destroyed cities. Human ships were delivering food and medicine to war refugees. All of this was happening right under the noses of both armies. How long have you been doing this? Supreme Commander Valathros asked. His voice was barely a whisper. 30 years, Morrison answered. Ever since we first met your people, we've been preparing, learning, getting ready for the day when we might be needed. But why? Commander Zelathan's tentacles curled with confusion. Why help us? Why risk your lives for strangers? Parker looked at each alien commander in turn. His blue eyes were hard as steel. Because someone has to stop this war. Because millions of innocent people are dying while you argue about politics. Because we're tired of watching good people suffer while bad people win. Admiral Yathara spread her wings wide. What do you want from us? Nothing, Morrison said. We don't want payment or territory or special treatment. We want the war to end. We want people to stop dying. We want to build something better than this endless cycle of violence. The alien commanders sat in stunned silence. They had spent so long fighting that they had forgotten there might be other solutions. They had become so focused on winning that they had stopped thinking about why they were fighting in the first place. The Syndicate has superior numbers and firepower, General Morthak said slowly. Even with your help, we cannot guarantee victory. Parker's smile returned, but this time it was different. This time it was the smile of a predator that had finally decided to hunt. Commander, he said, you're thinking like someone who wants to win a war. We're not here to win a war. We're here to end one. And there's a very big difference between those two things. The meeting ended with the alien commanders more confused than ever. They had expected to meet with primitive humans begging to help. Instead, they had discovered that Earth had been quietly building the most powerful fleet in galactic history. And the humans weren't asking for permission anymore. They were just informing everyone what was about to happen. The demonstration was over. Now came the real show. The first reports came in 3 days after Earth officially entered the war. The Galactic Council's emergency meeting hall was packed with frightened aliens. They all spoke at once, their voices mixing into a chaos of fear and confusion. Council. Member Ithala from the Crystalline Collective stood at the center podium. Her body was made of living crystal that normally glowed soft blue, but now it flickered red with panic. "The Crimson Syndicate's 7th Fleet has vanished," she announced. "All 800 ships gone without a trace." The hall erupted in worried chatter. The 7th Fleet was one of the Syndicate's most powerful forces. It had been patrolling the Outer Rim systems far from any major battles. How could an entire fleet just disappear? Ambassador Zortham from the hive minds buzzed with agitation. "Where are the distress signals? Where are the wreckage fields? Ships don't just vanish into nothing," but they had vanished. The last communication from Fleet Admiral Nixoth had been routine patrol reports. Then silence. Complete and total silence. It was as if 800 warships and their crews had been erased from existence. What the Council didn't know was that the Syndicate fleet was very much alive. They were just prisoners now. Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the assault carrier Freedom's Edge. She was 32 years old with black hair and scars on her left cheek from an old training accident. Her ship hung in empty space near the edge of the Veil Nebula, invisible to all sensors. "Status report," she ordered. Lieutenant Ben Walsh, her communications officer, looked up from his station. "All 800 Syndicate vessels are secured in the detention fields. Their crews are unharmed and have been transferred to the holding facilities on Asteroid Base 7, Rodriguez nodded. The operation had taken exactly 4 hours and 12 minutes. The human fleet had surrounded the Syndicate ships so quickly and quietly that the enemy didn't even have time to send a distress call. Specialized weapon systems had disabled their engines and communications without destroying the ships. It was surgical precision on a massive scale. "Any casualties?" Rodriguez asked. "None on our side," Walsh replied. 3 minor injuries among the Syndicate crews during the boarding operations. They're all receiving medical treatment. Rodriguez smiled grimly. The Syndicate commanders had expected a battle. They had prepared for death and destruction. What they got instead was capture and medical care. It was probably the most confusing day of their lives. Meanwhile, General Bob Stone was coordinating the largest military operation in human history. From his command center buried deep under the Rocky Mountains, he watched as human forces struck 17 star systems simultaneously. Stone was 58 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been planning this operation for 2 years ever since it became clear that the Galactic War was never going to end on its own. The alien races were too proud and too stubborn to make peace. They preferred to keep fighting until everyone was dead. Phase 1 complete, reported Colonel Mike Davis from the Communications Center. All targeted Syndicate fleets have been neutralized. Total enemy ships captured 2,417. Phase 2 status? Stone asked. Alliance forces are pulling back as ordered, Davis replied. They're confused but following our instructions. Most of them think we're retreating. Stone almost laughed. The Alliance commanders still didn't understand how humans fought wars. They expected big battles with lots of explosions and dramatic speeches. What they got was quiet efficiency and overwhelming force applied exactly where it was needed. But the Syndicate wasn't going to give up easily. Their supreme leader, Kraxoth the Destroyer, was known throughout the galaxy for his cruelty and pride. He would rather burn entire worlds than admit defeat. The news of the 7th Fleet's disappearance reached Kraxoth while he was planning his next major offensive. The 8-foot-tall reptilian alien smashed his communication console with one clawed fist. His red eyes burned with rage. "Impossible," he roared. "No one can defeat my fleets." But the reports kept coming in. The 3rd Fleet, gone. The 9th Fleet, vanished. The elite 5th Assault Group, missing. Every few hours, another Syndicate force simply stopped responding to communications. Kraxoth made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He ordered the deployment of the Void Reapers. The Void Reapers were the Syndicate's ultimate weapons. Each one was a massive ship, 5 kilometers long, and packed with enough firepower to destroy an entire planet. They had been used only 3 times in galactic history, and each time they had ended wars by demonstrating the terrible cost of defying the Syndicate. 3 Void Reapers were dispatched to the Outer Rim worlds. Their mission was simple: Destroy 3 Alliance planets as a message to anyone who dared to resist Syndicate rule. The targets were chosen carefully. Agricultural worlds with large civilian populations but minimal military value. The people of Aish, New Haven, green fields, and Peaceful Valley had no idea what was coming. They were farmers and teachers and shopkeepers who had never hurt anyone. They were about to die for the crime of living on Alliance worlds. Commander Matt Hayes received the alert while his squadron was refueling at a hidden base in the Horsehead, Nebula. He was 29 years old with brown hair and quick reflexes. He had been flying combat missions for 8 years, but he had never faced anything like a Void Reaper. "Phoenix Squadron, prepare for immediate departure," he ordered. "We have incoming planet killers." His squadron consisted of 48 of humanity's newest interceptor craft. Each ship was small and fast, designed to outrun anything the aliens could build. They were equipped with experimental shield systems that could absorb incredible amounts of energy. The human pilots knew they were flying into certain death. The Void Reapers had never been stopped. Their weapons could vaporize entire moons. But the pilots also knew that 3 worlds full of innocent people were about to die if they didn't act. "All right, people," Hayes said over the squadron frequency. "We're going to do something that everyone says is impossible. We're going to stop 3 planet killers with 48 small ships. Any questions?" "Just one, sir," replied Lieutenant Carol Brown from Phoenix 12. "Are we supposed to capture them alive like the other ships?" Hayes grinned. "Negative. These particular bad guys have forfeited their right to survive. We're going to show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens to murder innocent civilians." The 3 Void Reapers moved toward their targets like giant metal whales swimming through space. Their crews were confident and relaxed. They had done this before: point the ship at a planet, charge the main weapon, and pull the trigger. Simple. What they didn't expect was to run into a wall of small human ships that refused to get out of the way. The first Void Reaper fired its planet-killing weapon directly at Phoenix Squadron. The beam was so powerful it could be seen from 3 star systems away. It struck the human ships head-on, and the human ships absorbed it. The Syndicate crews watched in horror as the human interceptors soaked up enough energy to destroy a world and kept coming. Their shields glowed white-hot but held. Their engines never faltered. Their weapons never stopped firing. Captain Helen Brooks commanded the battleship Endurance from her position at the edge of the battle zone. She was 45 years old with silver hair and steady hands. She watched her pilots perform what everyone had said was impossible. "All Void Reapers disabled," she reported to General Stone. "Enemy crews are surrendering. We now have control of 3 planet-killer weapons." Stone sat back in his command chair and smiled. The Syndicate's ultimate weapons were now in human hands, along with their crews, their battle plans, and all their military secrets. The war was about to end, but not the way anyone expected. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in recorded history. Over 300 species sent their most important leaders to Nexus Prime. They came in ships of every shape and color, but they all carried the same message: fear. The Great Assembly Hall had been expanded 3 times to fit everyone. Floating platforms held creatures from gas giant worlds. Environmental suits protected beings who breathed methane or lived in liquid nitrogen. Translators worked overtime as hundreds of different languages filled the air with worry and panic. Ambassador Claire Wilson sat in the place of honor at the front of the hall. She was 38 years old with blonde hair and calm green eyes. 6 months ago, she had been sitting in the back corner where nobody paid attention to humans. Now, every alien in the galaxy wanted to hear what she had to say. The war was over. It had lasted 18 months and cost millions of lives. Earth had ended it in 12 days. The Crimson Syndicate had surrendered after their entire leadership was captured in a single night. 47 star systems had been raided simultaneously. Every Syndicate commander, every important official, every military leader had been taken prisoner without a shot being fired. The operation was so precise and quiet that most of them didn't realize they were captured until they woke up in human detention facilities. The Hegemony Alliance had begged Earth to stop after human forces liberated every contested world in less than a week. Alliance commanders watched in amazement as human ships appeared everywhere at once, drove off syndicate forces, and began rebuilding destroyed cities before the smoke had even cleared. But the aliens had made a terrible discovery. The humans weren't stopping. Even after both sides surrendered, human ships kept moving. They spread across the galaxy like a quiet flood, taking control of military bases, weapon factories, and government centers. They were polite about it. They didn't hurt anyone. They just made it clear that they were in charge now. Council leader Zerthan was the oldest being in the known galaxy. His species had been traveling between stars when most others were still living in caves. He was 3,000 years old and had seen the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations. But he had never seen anything like humanity. "Ambassador Wilson," he said, his ancient voice shaking with age and fear, "we need to know what Earth wants from us." Wilson stood up slowly. She looked around the hall at hundreds of alien faces. Some were angry, some were scared, all of them were confused. "We want peace," she said simply. "But you could rule us all," whispered Representative Mothari from the insectoid kingdoms. Her 6 arms trembled as she spoke. "Your ships are everywhere. Your weapons are beyond our understanding. Your soldiers are in our cities. Why don't you just take control?" Wilson smiled sadly. "Because that's not who we are." Director Paul Martinez was busy on the other side of the galaxy, but his work was the real answer to their question. He was 42 years old, with brown hair and hands that were always dirty from building things. He commanded the largest construction project in history. On Kepler 442b, human engineers were rebuilding cities that had been destroyed in the war. They worked alongside alien survivors, teaching them new building techniques and sharing human technology. The hospital that had been bombed 6 months ago was now bigger and better than before. On New Cygnus, human doctors were treating wounded soldiers from both armies. They didn't ask which side the patients had fought for. They just fixed broken bones, healed burns, and sent everyone home to their families. On Vega Prime, human teachers were working with alien children who had lost their parents in the war. They built schools and playgrounds and made sure no child went hungry or alone. "You see," Wilson continued, "humans have a different way of thinking about power. Most species believe that strength means the ability to destroy your enemies. We believe that true strength means the ability to help your friends." Admiral Carl Johnson was the new supreme commander of all military forces in the galaxy. Nobody had voted for him or appointed him. He had just quietly taken control of every fleet, every base, and every weapon system while everyone was busy arguing. Now alien officers followed his orders because they had no choice. But Johnson wasn't using his power the way anyone expected. Instead of building more weapons, he was destroying them. Instead of training soldiers for war, he was teaching them to build hospitals and schools. Instead of planning battles, he was organizing relief missions to help war refugees. "The age of endless war is over," Johnson announced from his headquarters on Earth. "Any species that attacks another species will face the full military might of humanity. Any government that oppresses its people will be removed and replaced. Any leader who chooses violence over peace will be stopped." The alien representatives in the council hall shifted nervously. They had spent thousands of years believing that war was natural and inevitable. Stronger species conquered weaker ones. That was just the way the universe worked. But humans were changing the rules. "What if we refuse to cooperate?" asked General Vorthak from the warrior clans. His people lived for battle and honor. The idea of permanent peace was alien to them. Wilson's green eyes turned cold as winter ice. "Then you will discover why every military force in the galaxy surrendered to us in 12 days. The threat was quiet and polite, but everyone in the hall understood it perfectly. Humanity had the power to destroy any opposition. They had proven it by ending a galactic war faster than anyone thought possible. The only reason the alien species were still alive and free was because humans chose to be merciful. "We don't want to rule you," Wilson continued, her voice becoming warm again. "We want to help you build something better than what you had before. We want to teach you how to solve problems without killing each other. We want to show you what the galaxy could be like if everyone worked together instead of fighting all the time." Council leader Zerthan looked around the hall at his fellow representatives. They were all thinking the same thing. For 3,000 years, the galaxy had been trapped in endless cycles of war and conquest. Species rose to power, dominated their neighbors, and eventually fell to newer and stronger enemies. It had happened so many times that everyone assumed it was the natural order of things. But humans were offering something different. They were offering a chance to break the cycle. "What guarantees do we have?" asked Ambassador Zithara from the Crystal Worlds. "How do we know humans won't become tyrants like all the others?" Wilson smiled again, but this time it was the smile of someone who had seen terrible things and decided to do better. "Because we're not conquerors, we're gardeners. We don't want to cut down the forest, we want to help it grow." The vote was unanimous. Every species in the galaxy agreed to the new system. They didn't really have a choice, but they were surprised to discover that they didn't want one either. For the first time in recorded history, every world in the known universe was working toward the same goal. Peace. The humans had done something that no other species had ever managed. They had united the galaxy not through fear or conquest, but through the simple promise of a better tomorrow. And they had done it by being exactly what they said they were: protectors, builders, gardeners of civilization. Human.